Hi, my name's Adrian, and this is my Module 7 poster session. So for this, I chose to use the Edmodo tool, mostly because a lot of kids are familiar with Facebook. So I think one of the ways to eliminate having difficulty navigating through different technology tools is to be able to provide kids with the ability to use something that they are somewhat familiar with, or is similar to other social media tools that they might already have seen. So we'll start with my little profile. Sorry, that takes us a little longer. So this kind of just introduces myself. My kids would obviously be able to have their own way to introduce themselves to the group and community as well. It just kind of goes over that I obviously, as an elementary teacher now, I would really like to stick with that. So just elementary age in general. So ideally that's the K-5 to 5th grade range. And I would mostly want to focus with teaching math and science and really working to incorporate curriculum that uses both math and science together, basically using the STEM projects, or STEAM is what some other people also refer to it as. So in this, I also have my teaching philosophy. So one of the quotes that I really am drawn to all the time for my philosophy is, "The mediocre teacher tells, the good teacher explains, the superior teacher demonstrates, and the great teacher inspires." And it's by William Arthur Ward. And this quote really just sums up my philosophy for teaching, in just that I feel like a lot of what makes a teacher an exceptional teacher is the fact that they can inspire their students in many ways and kind of bring out that inspiration that they kind of sometimes have deep down, and aren't always able to locate it. So as an online educator, I definitely would be using effective online tools to assist with creating a classroom culture of students that are inspired to learn and grow towards their goals in life. Bryce really made a statement in chapter 2 where he talks about that online teaching really is a good aspect for kids if that community culture is created and amplified. Without that community sense, obviously you can run into more issues with kids participating and whatnot. But once kids feel a part of it, being a part of the curriculum and a part of the creation and acting as teachers and such, they ultimately will take ownership of their learning, and that will increase the participation and engagement in an online setting. So ideally, what I kind of took away from him is that the classroom community culture is a must for an online setting. Face-to-face, yes, it helps, but I think it's even a bigger importance when you look at online schooling. So if we just go back to my home page. So over here kind of has just my classes, one of the groups that I would have. So STEM is something that I feel really strongly about, which is why I'm in the master's course for this. So that would ultimately be the type of course that I would like to teach. So it kind of goes over what I would do. So within the STEM lessons, I would kind of just be going through step by step. Number one, the exploration phase to begin. So use, ideally, since I'm not quite sure how materials are handled when it comes to science, the hope is that we'd be able to ship certain materials to them, but obviously not all materials might be able to be shipped to each individual's house for use. So using sorts and pictures and objects that you can just find around the home to really explore a set topic. For example, my kids in a face-to-face classroom recently did matter. So providing them with picture cards of different types of matter and having them do, in the exploration phase, a sort where they had to kind of figure out how some of them were connected and how some of them fit into certain groups within the whole topic, and just seeing kind of where they place objects, identifies misconceptions that students may have in regards to that topic then. From the exploration phase, that's when we really dive deeper into the explanation. So this would be where you would identify the learning goals for the unit. That would be key for the students to understand exactly what they're expected to be learning by the end of the unit. Students will also be connecting research and learning more about the topic through close reading, different things like that, and just kind of work to fix those misconceptions that they may have had during the exploration phase. Graphic organizers would be great to use at this time, as well as interactive journals that can be used online as well for note-taking purposes and whatnot. And then the step 3 would be digging deeper phase, so use of other experiments / explorations to kind of dig deeper into their learning and continue to work to correct those misconceptions that they previously had. And then obviously the assessment phase. Ideally, I do believe that summative assessments are great to have. However, formative assessments throughout the lessons prior to would also be used in various forms. So that's just a little bit about the topic in which I would teach. Ideally, I'd be looking at working with 3rd through 5th grade for that type of class. So when it comes to synchronous versus asynchronous type classroom settings, I just kind of put a little post up and just kind of which type will you see in our online classroom. And then I just kind of replied to myself, basically. So just kind of talking about, obviously, I think both are very important and both are critical at different parts of a child's learning. So being able to integrate both types. One of the ways that I felt asynchronous was a great aspect for kids was the whole sense of responding to discussion posts and just allowing kids that time to think and reflect and dig deeper into the text and have that time to answer a question versus like when we're in a face-to-face classroom. Obviously, there's not a lot of time for kids to really soak everything in and be able to provide in verbal or in written form a necessary answer. It's usually quick. So I like that aspect of the asynchronous environment, but I also enjoyed participating in the synchronous factor where we got to do, online conferencing. So using different tools that I can do where I can conference with my kids. I liked how the one teacher used it for additional, in a sense, tutoring time. So having an office time where kids could come in further and, ask questions or clarify what they've been working on, I think is great, especially in that sense of owning their learning. I think it's really critical to kind of allow kids to come to you at times. So having those additional online times where you're there, but not necessarily teaching a set class, really gives those kids the option to kind of come to you at their own speed. So like I said, I would be using both types within my online setting. And then if we go to the whole class, so I also kind of touched based on the assignments that would be doing, both formative and formative assessments given in many forms. I really like using online quizzes. I kind of wish I had more technology in my own classroom right now to use it more. But using online quizzes, using the different methods within the video conferencing, have kids become teachers of, a set problem or a set reading assignment would be really great to use. I do like how in Edmodo I can create different groups and assign groups different topics and different assignments within it. So that's a really great aspect of Edmodo that I'd be able to use for kind of like more so the asynchronous factor. Class Dojo is another tool that I would use. I enjoy it not necessarily for behavior, but I love getting parents involved in what the kids are doing on a day-to-day basis. So obviously I can't say whether or not the parents would be right there next to their child, watching what they're doing throughout the day. So I think having a Class Dojo page where parents have the ability to reach out to the teacher, ask questions, and I always post photos of my own classroom and different things that they're doing just to kind of share them with parents, since I know that, they're busy and they have things during the day that they're probably doing. So within my folders, I kind of talk about the collaboration tools. So I picked Zoom.us just because it is a free web conferencing, and you can click on it and it kind of just takes you to the home page to kind of give you more information about it. I also included the Class Dojo link as well. And then in here, I have a Google Doc. this is another reason I liked Edmodo. You can add links, you can add Google Docs, which are things that people can edit as a group if allowed. So I really like that aspect of being able to add different other tools to reach out to all those types of learners. So some special considerations for the tools is just understanding how accessible is the tool for all students. So if they're able to actually all get on and all use it with, little to minimum technology issues is always something to consider. I also think asking the question of whether it's actually enhancing the student learning or just there for pure entertainment purposes. Obviously, the goal would be to have tools that enhance student learning versus just being there as an engagement tool, because otherwise kids won't really use it the way it's supposed to be used. And then knowing the expectations and guidelines for using it, making sure that they're very clear to students. So in web conferencing, if there's a chance for students to chat, making sure students understand that the chat box is supposed to be used for, the specific purposes. And if not used correctly, these obviously are your consequences. So just keeping those high expectations and guidelines for the tools as well. And then also just to continue to understand whether the students are able to manipulate the tool or whether you as an, online educator or facilitator, whatever you see as your role, whether you can manipulate the tool to kind of reach the needs of all learners, which we've kind of learned a lot about and kind of looked at a lot of different things such as Google Docs and PowerPoints and, what are some ways that we can change certain things or how should things be laid out so that we're reaching the needs truly of all of our learners. So if we go back here and into post. Where did I put it? Now I have to think about it. Oh my goodness. Oh, I think it's in my home. So the last thing I kind of discussed was the ahas. So again, I added another Google Doc just because I really like that. So my aha moments and just my continued questions. So obviously online teaching I kind of realized, is it not as different than face-to-face as I originally imagined it to be. I imagined it to be a lot harder. But once seeing and participating ourselves, I realized it is very similar to face-to-face. There's obviously just the obvious barrier of not physically being there, but there's a lot of tools that can be used to kind of still give you that sense of being, with them and right next to them. A lot more time can be, is devoted to creating and implementing the curriculum in a way that reaches all learners. So I think it's really interesting how they talked about how there's probably even more time goes into implementing the curriculum in an online setting versus in a face-to-face. And just that there are a lot of great resources and tools that can be used to connect students and really build that sense of community that they speak highly of and encourage you to really put forth into your classroom. So further questions that I have, just in thinking about a lot of things recently, one was just kind of thinking about an IEP and how we do it in a face-to-face classroom and, or in a district or school, however you look at it. If students don't come in with an IEP, but you feel like one is needed, what is the chain of command that you would speak to kind of go over that and kind of get one in the works in a sense. I also thought a lot about my school and how we have special education teachers and ESL teachers that are used to kind of do push-in support as well as a little bit of pull-out. Our school mostly does push-in more so. So how would those supports be met in an online setting? How do you meet the needs of an ESL student by still incorporating them into the regular curriculum? And then how are materials distributed to students when it comes, to science lessons? So our students, and that further made me question, are they truly getting the same opportunity as students working in a face-to-face classroom? Because obviously not all materials can be shipped. You think about, a microscope. I probably can't ship that to a student. So are students really getting the same opportunity that other students are? So that is my poster session. And I hope you enjoyed.